Dude, you are getting well. Dude, welcome to the Dude You're Getting Well podcast, season 2. I am so excited and so grateful for everyone listening who's been a part of this experience, who's listened, supported, and kept this going. So we do this for you and by you and with you. And I'm so grateful to have each and every one of you here, whether you're joining live or you're listening to this podcast in the future. Thank you. And without further ado, we have years now. I've been following his work and he popped up. And I'm really grateful for the algorithms for bringing Kevin Crenshaw, the heart guy, into my life. So, Kevin, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Kevin, what had you say yes to being here? We don't really know each other.
We don't. And I'm always open to jumping on people's podcasts. Maybe it's because I started my own podcast 5 years ago, and I understand, like you want guests on the show, and sometimes if they've got a bigger audience, they're like opposed to it. And I'm always like, all right, like I'm not at that status yet where I don't I'm guarding my time crazily. So if somebody's asking me to be on their podcast, I'm like, yeah, let's talk. Like, why not? And it's always fun because like, yeah, I'm the heart guy and I do a lot of somatic work and relationship coaching and a lot of things, but the conversations that I have on different podcasts kind of go all over the board. And it's just, I don't know, it's fun. It's fun for me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for saying yes to being here and for everyone who's joining us. You call yourself the heart guy. I was immediately drawn to that. I feel like I'm a heart guy, and there's probably all kinds of heart people out there. Hopefully we are attracting them here today, and we all are, right? So when did you decide I'm the heart guy? Did you were you born that way? Were you like, here it comes, I'm the heart guy?
Kind of, sort of. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was born and like cried screaming for like the first 72 hours of my life. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, I'm here, motherfuckers, let's go.
Yeah.
That's how I, wins it now. But
I can
no,
relate.
actually, I was a group fitness instructor, a personal trainer before I did coaching work, and
Mhm.
mainly group fitness. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what I was doing was channeling, and I wasn't thinking, and then words were just coming out of my mouth, right? So I was super in flow, I was super in channel mode, and I had this saying called that I would say, like, put some heart into it, and it became this thing. And every time I'd say it, it'd give me goosebumps, and I'd like it. I People were getting T-shirts with "put some heart into it" on it, and I was like, that's dope. So I was building that business, that kind of became the slogan. And then when
Mhm.
I left fitness, because I was just burnt out and done with it, I'm like, there's more to life than the gym. And that kind of consumed me. I got obsessive with it all. And I was like, all right, what do I want to do next? And in that time, I'd been through my woes and heartbreaks and stuff with relationships. And in my spare time, was always reading books about masculine and feminine dynamics, or relational dynamics, like understanding psychology, or what was going on, what happened. And I was able to help a coworker save his marriage, actually, from a few conversations. And I was like, bro, I'm good at this shit. Like, what didn't feel ready. And I was like, I'm young, I'm single. How could I be a relationship coach? It took me a while to sell myself on the fact that I was still good at it. I could do it. And when I launched, I've always had a marketer's brain too. Like, even right now, my TikTok algorithm is all marketing stuff. I just geek out on it, branding, marketing. And so eh, I forgot who it was because it was at a party, but somebody was like, "Oh, so you're like the heart guy?" And I was like, "Yeah." And it just stuck and it clicked, and I sat with it, and I was like, "That's it." And so when I launched I told everybody I wasn't doing fitness anymore, had built up this Instagram to 75,000 followers or however much it was, and starting a new Instagram. At the time, the heart guy just clicked, it stuck, and it made sense. And at this time too, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like, I can help you live life from the heart. Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know, and I was tiptoeing on the relationship thing, and I started the podcast, and I was just momentum throwing spaghetti at the wall, seeing what stuck. And it kind of took a shape of its own to like dating coaching. And then I was like, that's not for me. And I was just trying things until I really found out that um, my niche in helping people at the time with healing codependency and finding self-love and inner peace. And then from that space, I've now built on a lot of the somatic work and now creating a healthy relationship. And how do you actually, the tools to do that has been my study and the evolution of it all. But that's the long and short of how I've the heart guy.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that. Thank you so much. And I hear your passion for relationships. Do you feel like, you mentioned you're a young guy, and anyone watching may see like, this guy's fairly new to this world. Like, does he have all the answers? Um, how do you, and you mentioned, feeling like you didn't know what you were doing, and I really appreciate that honesty. I wonder how many people really do, because the one thing we can count on is that life is always evolving. And
Mhm,
but I, what I hear is a lot of courage in your story,
mhm.
and that you just like went for it even when you didn't know, and you found yourself, and you found your um the really a purpose in that, and
Yeah.
even a structure for how to share that with the world, which is really moving to me. Like, codependency is something I've really dealt with and worked through actively for the last 10, 15 years of my life. And relationships, and learning to love myself. And, the older I get, the more I see adults who I feel like have kind of skipped over some of that.
Yeah.
Um, I think the world would, I was just talking to someone yesterday, like, what would be possible if we had relationship class in high school, right?
Fuck,
We're
dude.
dealing with this stuff as adults, but we're kind of already programmed. Like, we're already like, some of us feel like we're already fucked, like we've
Mhm.
been programmed for 30, 40 years a certain way, and trying to like reparent ourselves now is really challenging. Right. But uh, what keeps you going? Like, how did you, let's see what I want to ask you about this, because I'm really inspired right now and lit up by what you're sharing.
Awesome.
Here's what I want to ask you. Uh, did you struggle with relationships? Did you struggle with codependency? Are these things that at some point in your life you've ever felt like, I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm drowning? Like, how did these things become important to you?
Oh, 100%. Yep. Um, I was classic nice guy, people pleaser, codependent.
Mm,
Um, full like I created this persona of this super energetic, confident guy, but I really wasn't feeling that inside. Like leading group fitness classes all the time and building a huge following and like all this stuff, but really still suffering. And oh yeah, that was 100% me. And
did you ever feel
you know,
like an imposter being like the heart guy, and people calling you the
well, that
heart
was
guy?
with the
And
fitness stuff.
did you ever doubt yourself?
That was with the fitness stuff specifically in that season.
Mm,
So I wasn't, saying that that's what I was doing at the time. But yeah, I mean, growing like in this whole thing, it's a lot of imposter syndrome. There's been a lot of like, one of my best friends has really been supportive for me on this. And he's like, dude, like the fact that you're going through it or you've been through it is what make
mm,
qualifies you to do this work. And
mm.
so I just have to keep reminding myself of that. Like even this past fucking week, like I got into some old patterns. I was super anxious. Like I just wasn't operating in rhythm with my own body. And I was like trying to force my way onto things. And that's a pattern of mine that happens. And
Yeah.
so it's like even then I catch myself, I'm okay. But it's because I'm walking the path. Like I don't have all the answers. I am not perfect. I'm gonna fuck up. Like and I've come to terms with that. I think before I was trying to be perfect, and that's why the voice of
Mm,
the um, uh, it, imposter syndrome was coming up, right?
yeah.
And so I'm just like, dude, I'm just a guy who knows a few things about a few things, and I've been through a lot in my life in this short
Mm,
amount of time. And I enjoy facilitating. That's something that I've always enjoyed as a kid growing up. Like some of my favorite memories was having friends over and like throwing parties. And even, facilitating group fitness classes or facilitating a course now online or facilitating retreats that I do. I love the facilitation of group experiences. I even do like audio and sound for other coaches and their retreats, and that's really fun. Um,
Oh, wow.
so like
Yeah.
it's about that and creating experiences, because experiences are what traumatize us and create the shift in our being, and it's also what heals us. And so, um, yeah, I'm more of like an artist or an architect of experiences, to have somebody have the right healing experience to
Mm.
repattern their nervous system, and to give their neurology an opportunity to be neuroplastic again, to create a shift.
Yeah. There's so many great things you just said in there. First of all, going back to the imposter syndrome, for anyone who's dealing with that today, I ask you about that because I deal with that too, and I'm sure a lot of people do. But for anyone who's really waking up and dealing with that today or on a regular basis, what are some of the tools you'd recommend? The things that have worked for you, or that you would suggest for people going through that themselves?
Good question. I think imposter syndrome, like looking back at it, I think imposter syndrome is a symptom of shame or unintegrated part of ourselves. Um, at least that's what it was for me, right? Can't speak for everybody, but for me, it was like I couldn't accept that I wasn't perfect. So then I would beat myself up or have an imposter syndrome. That was the symptom of like not being perfect, or having it all
Mm,
together or whatever. So I had this image of who I thought I should be, wasn't matching up to that. Um, so I thought something was wrong with me, and sure, I had the courage and was bulldozing over it. But the more that you keep going forward in spite of imposter syndrome and just do it and all the things, the louder that voice gets, until you sit down and look at the fundamental beliefs about yourself. And if you can accept that you're not perfect and you still have value and you still can bring something to the table and support other people, and accept that reality, the imposter syndrome kind of goes away. Um,
mm.
in my
So I hear you
experience.
focusing on what is working for you. Like, what are you almost like what can you be grateful for? What are the things you're doing well in your life that
In a way, and it's not setting the expectation on yourself to be perfect or have it all together in
mm,
order to help somebody else.
yeah.
Like I used to use this analogy of like, if you have 100 pounds to lose and you've lost 30 pounds, somebody asks you for help, you're not going to tell them no, or like, hey, I don't know anything. You're like, yeah, I lost 30 pounds. Here's how to do it. And I've got 60 more to lose, but I'm further ahead than this guy.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
so
It's
just
beautiful.
keeping that in mind too, and I don't know, being humble about it. I don't have all the answers, and I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. I'm not trying to be.
Yeah, that's great. And I feel like imposter syndrome must bleed into relationships, right? How if we're trying to
Oh
be
yeah.
something in a relationship, I heard this quote that for the first, was it like 3 years, we're almost dating like different masks of ourselves and each other until we finally trust enough to show, the most vulnerable things. And it's obviously different for everyone, but how have you seen, like, what have you learned about imposter syndrome in regards to relationships and how we can, heal those things, those ideals we think we need to be, or the perfections we think we need to be? Like, I'm sure you see that in relationships.
Well, the relationships show us our shadow, show us that brings up that part, right? So if you inherently within yourself don't feel lovable or enough, you're going to get into a relationship. It's going to trigger something that's not going to make you feel lovable or enough. Like, oh my God, like you're too, like this is, how did I deserve you? And like all these things. Or you're going to shame yourself and be like, you don't deserve me or whatever. But that's been happening inside already. It's been there.
Mm,
The relationship has shown it to light. And the biggest thing with that is it's operating from a conditional lens of love. So it's still operating from your conditioning of, I do this thing and then I can get the reward. And you look at your track record, or you look at what you have or haven't done, and you're like, well, what do I do to deserve this? Well, in relationships, you don't do anything to deserve it. Technically, they're loving you for the essence of who you are, but it's gonna fuck with that part of your brain that's still operating in conditional love.
mm,
And so a lot of it is we're getting in the way of receiving love. We can give love all day long. You know how
mm.
it feels to give to somebody when they don't deserve it, quote unquote. because you're loving their being. It doesn't matter what they did or didn't do. And we then block it though when it's received. And
Mm.
that cuts off the natural flow of giving and receiving, which shrinks our nervous system or our state. We internalize and we crunch in and we block more.
It reminds me of that nice guy thing where you're like, I got you, like you'd give the shirt off your own back, but when
Yeah,
people are trying to love you, you're like, no, 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 it's that like
totally,
resistant thing.
totally.
And you're totally blocking ourselves off from receiving.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things. And then also with imposter syndrome in relationships, it's the biggest thing with relationships that people don't consciously oftentimes do is check their mindset, because before the relationship, you're operating as an I, me entity.
Mm. Hmm.
I'm going to do what I want to do. And I don't have to check in with anybody. Like you have that with, it's interesting. We have a we when we grow up with parents, and then you find your independence and become an I, and then you get into a relationship and it's back to we again.
Hmm.
And so it's operating with that independence, but now it's like going into a two-person system and recognizing that what you do has an impact on the other person, or what you don't do has an impact on the other person. So it's recognizing the responsibility of that, and making that shift into a two-person system so that you can be on the same team. Then the
Mm.
imposter stuff goes away and you see yourself as a team. It's like, okay, we're in
Yeah.
this, we're gonna build this thing together, versus, well, I'm not good enough to all this stuff, right? Like, because you're still
Yeah.
I'm not, you're still, it's a clear sign. What's the language you're using? Because it's showing you what system your mindset is in. And it's going to
Mm.
fluctuate, it's going to go back and forth. It's important to have both, but how much of the we conversation are you having, or is it too much of the I? Because that'll show you if you're operating from an independent system or a partnered system.
Yeah. I appreciate that analogy. And then the other thing that comes up for me here is, I being a recovering codependent, um, or recovered. I mean, yeah, it's a process.
It is.
I would always focus on the we, and like us,
Mm,
us, us, and my partner would start like, I'm really grateful for my partner for this, because I had to learn to heal this in a relationship. I wish I'd healed this some before. I was on the process. We were both trying to be single when we met. Um, and I was sober and like really taking on my self-care in a new way. But she eventually said, my therapist always said like codependency is your thing, you know,
mm,
like if there's
mm,
anything you should go to a support group for, it'd be that, because I could see it in my parents. But my wife finally said like we'll be good after you take care of yourself. Like you've got to like take the focus
mhm,
off of me and us. Like you need to handle your own shit, dude. Like
mm,
seriously. And that reminds me, that's when I started learning more about balance and
mm.
the masculine and feminine and polarity. And I've always been fascinated with human psychology and relationships. So I can see when you talk about focusing on the we, the like, um, part of me says, well, be careful of not focusing too much on that. Like, be sure to take care of yourself. Like, keep your own house clean first.
Yeah, it's a spectrum, and
Right.
you need both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the number one? You've worked with a lot of different relationships and couples, and obviously, sort of all of life is a relationship to something or someone. Are there any common themes you see, the challenges in relationships that people come to you with, or that you perceive?
It's a really good question. Uh, um, I don't think this is what they're aware of, but it's your own shame or past experience being recreated in the present moment. So you're bringing up shame for something and it gets in the way of your intimacy, or you go into a trance and are playing out a scenario that happened in your past with your parent or with an ex. It has nothing to do with the present reality. Um, So that stuff is kind of what gets in the way. And people think it's okay, like effective communication is what I need in order to build a relationship. And it's so true. And part of that is in listening and effective listening, which can only happen when your nervous system is regulated, which means you have to know how to regulate your partner's nervous system and be responsible for your own at the same time. And so that conversation of like regulation and minimizing relational stress in the house, and because love shouldn't be hard, like life is hard for a lot of people, and so it's like, how can we make this thing that we've got going on, because we want this, so easy and smooth, and being the safe space for each other. And from that, when you're nourished in that way, everything else is taken care of. And I would say another theme is pointing the finger. So like your partner has this, like, you're codependent. Okay. Yeah. And like, are you a safe space for me to like start to unravel that? Or are you just demonizing me for being a certain way? Is even more triggering. It's adding more shame. And so another way I like to think of it, that I mentioned the shame thing, where we shame ourselves internally and how we talk to ourselves in our own head is how we're going to default to talking to our partner. Damn it, Kevin, you shouldn't have done that thing. Well, when she does something, I'm going to be like, damn it, Summer, you shouldn't have done that thing. We're going to almost use the exact language. It's going to be the same energy. And so in healing our inner dialogue, coming to more wholeness internally through somatic work, but also in the mindset, we're able to then consciously choose how we respond to what's happening within our relationship or with our partner, because we're doing that internally too. If we have compassion for our parts, we're like, okay, yeah, you fucked up, dude. And that's totally okay. Like, I can see how that happened. We're not going to do it again. Right. Like, I got you. We're still in this. Like, that's somebody's self-talk with, they love themselves. They'll be able to have that and create that in a relationship, especially once they've cleared the shit from their past too. So they don't go into a trance.
Okay. Got it. This is good. So how the hell do we, in your perspective, clear the shit from our past? Right? How do we go about that? That sounds like a big, hunk of something to take on. And then I'd also, how do you approach that? Like, if you see that people are carrying their past into a relationship or a situation, what coaching or guidance might you give them around that?
That's literally what I help people with. So first, it's getting clear on what you want, because if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. So what do you want for yourself? And maybe you've never given yourself the opportunity to ask that question, because when you were a kid, you didn't have a say, or you've neglected your own desires for so long for the sake of somebody else's, right? So get clear on what you want, where you want to go, what you want your relationship to look, feel like, how you want to feel internally, what you want your lifestyle to be like. You just get clear on all of that stuff. And then you ask, well, who do I get to become in order to manifest this and keep that type of a relationship? And then you get to see all the ways you don't match up. Boom. There's your map for doing the inner work. And then we dive in. It's a lot of choosing yourself and making a declaration to show up for you. There's a bunch of stuff of healing of your parts and things like recognizing your inner critic is just there to serve you, and it wants to keep you safe. It does a horrible job at it, but it just wants to keep you safe. And then finding wholeness in this inner dialogue.
Damn you, inner critic.
Yeah. So not fighting yourself, essentially, and creating that inner conversation. I do a lot of forgiveness work, clearing stuff with parents, extracting the lessons, clearing stuff with exes, and a lot of somatic work. So, some people have forgiven in their head. They get it. They can rationalize it. But if there's symptoms still showing up, your body hasn't. Your body hasn't let go. And so it's given the
talk about what those symptoms might look like.
That's good. Going into a trance, reacting in a way that's like you would have reacted back then. That has nothing to do with the present moment. So like a codependent tendency, an anxious avoidant or attachment, or whatever it is. Um, there's so many ways, but where you essentially disconnect and you get triggered
Yeah.
out of something that was kind of like almost inappropriate to get
Yeah.
triggered by. If you zoom out and a third person were to see that, they're like, okay, what's going on there? And that those are symptoms of something internal that still is locked inside of you. And I like to give the analogy of, and this is also when I say somatics, it's clearing the nervous system. So let me talk about that too, because a lot of people understand forgiveness or get clear on what you want and talking with the voices in your head. But from the nervous system side, think of it like a pipe. And there's that's your nervous system. It's clear. It means you get a signal, channel runs through. When your pipe is clogged, we feel fear or we feel anger or we feel something and then we shame ourselves for feeling it. I shouldn't be feeling this right now. Mom told me not to. I'm going to bite my tongue to keep the peace with the relationship. Whatever it is, we tense and we don't express the emotion. Well, now we have a clogged pipe. Okay. And then what happens when you have a clogged pipe? Shit keeps piling up. The life keeps lifing. And now you've got not just that original emotion, but it's a backed up of a ton of other things. So when I hold space for my clients, we go wherever it needs to be gone and you clear the pipe. What that looks like, it's different for everybody, but it's an emotional release, essentially. People that have done breath work before, it's similar to that. I don't use breath work all the time for my clients, but it's not forcing out a cathartic release. It's allowing this body enough safety to do or say whatever the fuck it didn't get a chance to say. So if you never said fuck you, how dare you do that? Or you said never got a chance to say no. That's pent up. That's the clogged pipe. We clear it. And on the other side of this, I mean, it takes almost an hour to do. And then on the other side of this, you have a crazy amount of peace and you start tingling. You know what those tingles are is your nervous system literally coming back online. You feel the part of your pipe that was cut off before, so to speak. And when that happens, then integration is the most important thing, because you can do that and go slip back right into your old patterns, right into your old relationship. And then it would have just been like a cool, fun thing, crazy experience. And it can also be further dysregulating to your system. So you have this opening, and then I support my clients on doing the thing that your old personality didn't do. So if you were codependent like myself, my thing that I didn't do was have confronting conversations. So right after that release, we make a list of all the people that you need to have a confronting conversation with, or you need to clear internally. And I hold my clients accountable to doing that and give them a process and support in doing that. And you do the thing that's scary to your old person. You're literally building your neurology. And on the other side of that, you are so much more whole, but also not like from a felt sensed experience of life. You don't have this undertone of anxiety. You don't get triggered as easy of things. You're more rooted and grounded in who you are, and you're more whole. With that comes the self-love and everything. And that gives you the foundation to then we start downloading all the tools for healthy relationships. So that's effective communication, all the other things, but you have to clear the other stuff first to build that foundation to implement the other stuff. Cause you'll always default to what you haven't dealt with. Right. And nobody's perfect.
Yeah, that's a great quote.
This work has layers. So, but that's essentially what I help my clients with, is coming back home into themselves and detaching from the things that created those ruptures where they abandoned themselves. So that's really the real abandonment, was you abandoning you because you thought you needed to be somebody else in order to receive love. Right. And so it's coming back home to the self, not just mentally, not just cognitively, or like, oh yeah, I rationally understand that, but from a felt sensed experience of life. And that's where a lot of the work that I do hits on. And, whatever's close to your heart, is, that's why I do relationship coaching mainly, is because those are the things that are close to our hearts, emotionally charged. And so we have a better touch point of when things are off.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. You talked about the importance of feeling and getting in your body. For people who don't know what somatics is, can you speak? And also, I want to say this pipe metaphor is really clear, and it really, like, it reminds me of, every man I've ever met, trying to be something, or even women. It's not even about gender necessarily, but people who have dealt with anger, been taught that anger is inappropriate, and then it ends up exploding in inappropriate places because we're not dealing with it.
Yep.
And then you talked also about, like, this having some kind of reaction that seems like sort of abnormal to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a great quote I heard in the Al-Anon family groups recovery, and that's, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So if you're having what's a seemingly hysterical response to something that, you're like, I just, like, didn't slice the bread right or something, and you're freaking out, that it's probably historical.
That's really good.
Which really nails it for me with, it's similar to what you said with defaulting to what you haven't dealt with.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll keep having these responses until you deal with it. And it can seem like, a little hysterical. There's a question actually that just came in from someone listening live, Giovanni Nunes. So welcome, and thank you for sharing. He said, why do you guys think most of today's relationships don't last? First, I want to say that's an interesting point of view, right? That's a perspective and something that I get you're really experiencing, that a lot of relationships don't last. So let's try that on for a moment. If that was true, Kevin, how might you speak to that? I mean, statistically, we know they're, like, more ending in divorce, right? But we don't actually, I think less people are getting married. They're just in relationships.
Yeah, a lot of relationships
what do you
fail,
think?
I think, is what he's getting at, or they end. That's not necessarily failing. I think people don't have a clear understanding of why they're getting into the relationship in the first place. How does this serve me? This is the hardest shit you're gonna do. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to get love, or are you doing it because you love that person, you want to give? Are you doing it to grow? I have my podcast. I interview couples who've been together for decades and still passionately in love, and it's really awesome. And one of the themes, there's a few themes, but one of the themes in those who have made it, quote unquote, is both individuals value growth. That is one of, if not the biggest factor in relationships lasting, is that both individuals value growth. What does that mean? Well, when the shit hits the fan, when you don't like that person, when you get bored, when all this other whatever, when the kids happen, when all the stuff, life happens, you'll find a way to grow through it together. When you're at fault, or your shit's coming up, or they're at fault and their shit's going to come up, there's going to be an introspection and a growth, because you value growth. You're like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Now I'm aware of that. Let me go and do my work, or let's do this, dig on this together. Let me support you. Like, there's, again, that togetherness, because they understand why they're in the relationship in the first place. And they see that it's a place to grow. When you get into a relationship just so that I can get love, well, you're in it to get, and that's a disconnect. Yeah, that's a part of it, but that shouldn't be the main reason. And I believe that that's one of the main reasons that people do it. They are looking for something or someone external to fill a void inside of them.
I think that, I would agree on that too, because we also believe that we need relationships, and we need someone else to complete us. So we're not actually doing the work on ourselves, and we're expecting someone else to do that for us.
Mhm.
And that's, I mean, I always worked on myself, but I always tried to like date up, like some
Yeah.
woman who had her shit together a little bit more than me. But eventually they're like, dude, I'm tired of like, you're like a weight, you're
Mhm.
dragging me down. And it's because I
Yeah.
was leaning on them for some healing. Even when I first got sober and I met my wife and she was sober too, she was like, I'm not your higher power, man. Like, I'm not here to keep you sober. Like, get me off this pedestal. Like, I'm doing my thing. I need you to do yours.
Mm.
And I just loved her more. I really,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Um, I really appreciate, what you're saying about one of the greatest therapists I ever had. She did some couples counseling too. And I said, she said, I really think you guys are going to make it at one point. And I said, why? And she said, because you're both willing to work on your relationship. Because I asked her, I was like, what's the thing? You see so many couples come in here. She said, a lot don't make it. And I said, well, what's the thing you see in the ones that do? And she said, they're both willing. They're both working on it. They're both willing to work on it.
Yeah.
And I think it's when someone really decides like, I'm done working on it, that it ends.
Mhm.
But the ones that like, it's a joy to work on it in a way, and we get to do that with ourselves. And I think that's reteaching ourselves like what a healthy relationship looks like, and I really don't, from my perspective, I can't have a truly healthy relationship with someone else if I'm not nurturing my relationship with myself. I mean, as
So
soon as
true.
I put that out,
Yep.
as soon as my self-care goes out, my marriage starts like getting strained,
Yeah.
and I start feeling needy and dependent on
Mhm.
my whoever's around. If it's not my partner, I'll go find someone else to take hostage. And that's like
Yeah.
the old me. That's my old patterning, because that's how I learned to be safe,
Yeah.
right? In a household that didn't always feel safe, I would cling to certain people or
Mhm.
become an actor. I became a professional actor because I was so good at being the chameleon.
Mm.
Um, and I really appreciate, you saying, both people willing to work on this. And so for those people who are willing to work on the relationship, well, let me ask you this. If one person, I see this a lot, like I work with a lot of men, like they're new fathers or they're on an
Mm.
edge of divorce or going through divorce, or they're finding themselves newly in a relationship, or they're single and they're looking to like fall in love. Um, I see a lot of them dealing with like trying to receive, like do all the alpha stuff, be all the like providing stuff in order to receive validation. I see a lot of guys almost I almost lost it here, like really afraid to deal with those feelings, and also because they don't know how to, like they don't have the tools for how to self-care anymore.
Yeah.
Or it's becoming, they think they're soft as a result, right? Oh, here's what I wanted to say, um, is that if they've decided they want to work on the relationship, let me shift what I was going to ask you.
Mhm.
If one person decides they want to work on the relationship, the other person feels kind of done. Do you ever see that, and how do you work with that? Like when kind of both people aren't really willing to work on it, but one of them's there to see you, right? They're like, Kevin, help us.
Um, I've that's actually the majority of people that I work with.
Yeah, you're like, have
And I'm
you
not working
spoken
with
to your
both. I'm not
partner?
working with both of them. I work with one person.
Okay. Okay.
There's a quote by Esther Perel, who is a relationship coach as well,
I love her.
well known. And she says that it takes two to create a pattern, but one to change it.
Mm.
And I think that sums up perfectly the work that I do with people. Because if one person's not willing to do the work, they don't think they need it, whatever. But one person is, at least if they do the work on themselves, all the stuff that we've been talking about, diving into their shadow, getting into their body, healing the stuff from their past, so they show up differently in the relationship, and they're showing up as their best self, quite literally. Well, that has an impact on the dance that the couple has of life,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
the other person is going to feel that ripple. And they might then start respecting themselves, respecting the other person, changing some stuff up. It changes the dynamic. You're linked quantum
Yeah.
physically, and with one starts changing, it's inevitably going to change the other. Now,
So
I
for every
change.
action, there's a reaction, right? So if you take this
Yeah,
on yourself, then it inevitably is going to have some impact on the relationship.
exactly. And what essentially we're doing is we're getting closer to the truth internally. You're
Mm.
becoming more whole and connected to your truth and the truth. And when that happens, you might uncover that, oh my God, I love my partner so much more, even now. Or, holy shit, this isn't right for me.
Mhm.
And, I don't make that decision for people. They make it for themselves because they found wholeness internally.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And for everyone listening, like afraid of like, oh shit, does this mean I'm gonna like have to end my relationship? Just remember, like, if you
Mhm.
just take care of yourself, it'll like the rest will handle. It feels like the universe will support you and
Yeah,
what's best for you as you start to, if you take the actions consistent with that, I think all the rest just falls away, right?
it really does.
So Kevin, you have some awesome work. I really want to make sure we have enough time to get through what we need to before we go. And I want to thank you for your time. And again, thank you for everyone listening live. The questions you're asking are great. I can feel the listening, and thank you again. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and that'll help spread this love, spread this mess, and spread these, with all the news we have coming at us, like, please let us hear more love, right?
Yeah.
And this is one way you can do it, is comment and share and subscribe. Same thing on YouTube. Kevin, for anyone who is digging your work, who likes your energy, or has more questions, or just wants to get in touch, or work with you,
Mhm.
what's the best way to get hold of you?
On Instagram at the Heart Guy. And then I've got a retreat that's happening middle of April out here in Austin, Texas. That's a 3-day deep dive to do exactly all the things that we were just talking about, of clearing the past, building a new like secure attachment style in your nervous system, and learning the skills and tools to effectively relate to another. So if you're wanting a deep dive and changing how you relate intimately, you need to clear things. Maybe you've been doing the work, but you're just running into the same patterns. Um, this is for you. And I would love to see you there. It's the link in my bio, so you can check it out. Again, the Heart Guy on Instagram.
Awesome. So we put that in the comments there. It's up here. Pretty easy to remember. That retreat sounds wonderful. Where are
Yeah.
you doing it? If we're
At an
coming, will
Airbnb.
we be live with you in
Yeah,
person?
in person, live
That's amazing.
facilitation. Let's go. That's where I thrive most.
So we'll be
Uh,
in a house or a center, or what kind of place?
at an Airbnb, there'll be about 20 other people, so it's gonna be somewhat more of an intimate experience. But I'm excited to go deep.
And what can we expect for those of us who might want to join during the 3 days? Like,
Well, don't join if you don't have the courage to do the inner work. Let's just say
hmm,
that. If you got the courage, you want to work on you and make a shift internally, then this is perfect, because this work takes courage to do. If you
hmm,
really want to repattern your nervous system in the way that it relates to others, that's exactly what we're going to be doing. So expect clearing your pipe, expect to let go and release of stuff from the past, repattern how your brain operates in relationships, and learn the skills of effective relating to build a healthy relationship. You'll walk out of that with more self-love, inner peace, and just confidence in relating in relationships. It's what you can expect. And you're going to have a great
that's
time.
well, having fun sounds great too.
Yeah.
I'm all about that. And Kevin, I really appreciate the work that you do. I would love to have you back. There's lots more I want to talk to you about and dive into, but from one brother to another, and we found out we're both from Tennessee, so that's pretty cool. Shout out to
It is.
Tennessee. Yeah, I really want to say thank you, and it's
Thank you.
really meaningful to me. It's really special too. For those of you who follow me, like, my father is one of my greatest heroes and was my best friend, and died 2 years ago, like almost on this day. It's like 2 days from
Wow.
now. And so he's been coming up a lot in my life, and especially today. And,
Wow.
we had rescheduled this podcast, and then you told me today you're from Memphis, which is where my dad was born. And I'm like,
Mm.
what are the odds, But that's what I
Wow.
ask for. Like, I pray and meditate every day, and I ask for his spirit to help kind of show me the way, because he was a heart guy.
Mm.
And so it reminds me, I share that with everyone, because it's not always easy, but it reminds me how beautiful that is. And no matter what the gender is, that we need more love, but to have another man leading with heart and leading with love, I think is truly the medicine that we need, and can support, all relationships, if we can heal some of that stuff that we're dealing with. So thank you for the work that you do and for who you are. It's really beautiful and inspiring.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to have you on here. I have one or two closing questions, and I know you have a
Okay.
hard stop, but
Let's do it.
all right, cool. So if your life, I ask all my guests this. So if your
Uh-huh.
life were a movie, a Hollywood film up until this point, what would be the name of it?
Um, the first thing that came to my mind is what the fuck?
That's great. That's
Just
great.
being honest. What the
Yeah.
fuck?
And are you
Um,
currently dating anyone?
I am.
And if they were to name the movie, what might they call it?
Of my life?
Yeah.
What should she call it? She would say, um, something about like Tinder power.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah, she's an amazing reflection for me of
Oh my
remembering
God.
my
That's
truth.
really moving to hear that. Tender power. That's gorgeous. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
That's rich. Um, Now, who you could cast anyone as your parents, who would you cast?
Well, that's a very interesting question.
This would be in the what the
Um,
fuck version.
yeah. Um, if I could cast anyone as my parents. I mean, looking at it now, my soul chose my parents, so I guess I already
Mm.
cast them. You know what I mean? We can look at it
Oh,
that way. Because it all happened. Like I
yeah.
wouldn't do it again, but it all happened perfect.
Oh,
Like I can
that's
see the
great.
bigger picture in it because it led me to being me. And if I cast somebody else, well, then I won't be me anymore.
I love that answer. That's beautiful. Are you reading any books currently that you're really psyched about that you might want to share?
Rick Rubin's new book,
Ooh,
which is The Creative Act. It's really good.
cool. Awesome. As a musician, I'll definitely check that out. I've been seeing him speak everywhere lately.
Yeah,
Um, okay, cool. The Creative Act. And what's your favorite curse word?
probably fuck.
All right. And lastly, um, if you could give the world one gift today, what would you give us?
Probably a deep breath or a pause. And I would just say breathe for those who can't because somebody didn't get that
Hmm.
opportunity.
Hmm.
You've
And
you've
Kevin, if
already
we
you've
were,
already won. You've already won.
yeah,
You're alive. Like everything else is just a fucking game.
that's gorgeous. And if we all took a deep breath together, what do you see us all doing? We might not have otherwise.
Living more from your heart.
Hmm. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, the heart guy, Kevin Crenshaw. Thank you for being here. Thank you again for everyone
You.
listening. Kevin, it was a really beautiful episode. If you're listening live, this will be out next week. You can listen again or look at here, leave a comment, contact Kevin or me if you want to get a hold of him. I'm happy to put you in touch and let us know what's resonated. It filled my heart today. So
Awesome.
have a beautiful day and thanks again. Take care,
Later.
Kevin.